Hello everyone and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Demand Gen Report and really glad you could join us today. Data has been one sort of the ongoing and hidden secrets that we've heard a lot of our readers talk about over the years. It's been one of the issues that everybody sort of knows they have, but we don't hear a lot of great examples and case studies about how people have addressed it. So we're really excited for today's session. The title of today's session is Lessons in Managing Data from Over 200 Marketing Automation Implementations. We're going to discuss how to solve your most common data problems. So as I mentioned, looking forward to this because it's really based on some great expertise and some great real-world examples. So looking forward to today's presentation. As with all of our webinars, we'd like to try to make this as much of a conversation as possible. So we will be encouraging you to submit questions. We're also going to be following any conversations and comments on social media. We ask that you use the hashtag data lessons. We'll be having our team monitor that. There's also the handles for today's speakers there, that if you want to include that in any of the comments or tweets. So we'll be checking out LinkedIn and trying to chime in on some of those conversations. So please go ahead and be social during the today's presentation. Today's presentation is being hosted by Demand Gen Report. If you're not already a subscriber to our publication, we encourage you to take advantage of the great content that we produce. We have a lot of proprietary research. Some of that we'll share with you today. You get access to that as well as webinars and online content, podcasts, as well as our weekly newsletter and real-time daily news that we publish. You can take advantage of that free subscription at demandgenreport.com. Also encourage you to join some of our social groups. We have Demand Gen specialists on LinkedIn that get some great active conversations going about topics like today's. Today's platform we're using On24, and today's presentation will last for about 35 minutes, and then we're going to be spending about 10 to 15 minutes to take your questions. We're going to take the questions at the end of the presentation, but go ahead and type those in as they come to mind. You can do that right in the Questions tab, where you go type your questions again when you think of them, and then we'll remind you when we get to the end to go ahead and type them in if you haven't already. You'll notice within the On24 dashboard there's also an area where you can download related resources to today's topic, and you can also keep an eye on the social conversation right within the dashboard. Just to tackle some of the frequently asked questions we get, yes, today's session will be recorded. All registrants will get a link to go back and view it or share with your peers. So today's topic is about the impact of data on B2B marketing campaigns and challenges. I wanted to share some highlights from the study that we do on an annual basis where we look at some of the best practices and challenges that we see. When we ask folks about where they are in terms of best describing their current data acquisition strategy, the challenge you can see here is there's a real lack in confidence in where folks are. They realize there's room for significant improvement. So that's kind of the bad news that this has been a challenge we've seen for a couple of years now as marketing automation adoption has evolved. People have realized that data is really critical to success, but I think it's been harder to tackle than a lot of folks imagined, and it's probably lost in the priority battle to some sexier topics like content marketing, et cetera, but we're just hearing more and more that people are realizing this is a priority and a problem that needs to be addressed. So we'll be getting into that further in today's session. The other sort of related topic is the core of data is making sure that you have updated and current and clean data. And again, that's been a harder problem for a lot of folks to solve, although they realize it's a priority. That same study, we asked folks, how often do you scrub and cleanse your data for accuracy and quality? And you can see it's a real mix. One of the biggest segments is quarterly, which I think today's practitioners will tell you that that's probably not frequently enough. And then there's a mix of some folks that are doing monthly, weekly. The biggest 46% don't know or aren't sure. So I think that probably speaks to they're probably not prioritizing and doing it on the frequency they need to. The good news for us, what that we found in the study, is this is becoming much more a priority. 30% of the respondents said that they are dedicating more than 10% of their overall marketing budget to database management and acquisition over the next year. So I think people are have come to the realization that campaigns are not going to they're not going to be able to do some of the cool things they want to do with campaigns and segmentation and new things like ABM. Without having good, clean, and accurate data. When you look at some of the challenges, you can see on that small, some of it comes down to expertise, but a lot of it is sort of time and management and process, as well as some other challenges. So again, we've got two great expert speakers today. They're going to share some suggestions on how to overcome these. So as I stated in some of those data points, our agenda for today is to cover some of the common issues that digital marketers are facing around data and marketing automation. We've got a great use case that we're going to share. We'll be looking at sort of a use case where you are a new marketing director and how you set out on this journey and what some of the things that you're going to have to tackle. We're going to look at some of the related solutions around there that you can utilize in terms of discovering new data sources and new acquisition paths, in terms of also how you can plan, define, and execute that. We're going to be looking at the solutions for an ongoing database, not just a sort of incremental solution, and then some other friendly tips and advice that we'll have from today's two expert speakers. So without further ado, let's get into the meat of today's content. I want to introduce you to today's speakers. We'll be hearing from Alyssa Hewitt. Alyssa is a senior consultant and technical account manager for the Pedowitz Group. She's certified as a Marketo expert, solutions architect, and instructor. She has over 7 years of marketing automation experience, working and consulting for companies of every size across every industry, assisting clients in leveraging and optimizing their systems, processes, and database in support of their organizational goals for growth. Joining Alyssa, we'll be hearing from Emily Salus. Emily has over 20 years of experience in marketing and professional services roles. She had led the Marketo services team at the Pedowitz Group before joining Openprise, where she won the Marketo Partner of the Year award 3 years in a row. She's also led the demand generation, content marketing, and marketing operations for several companies, including CNET Channel, CollabNet, and Sleepy Cat Software. So we've got two great speakers, and without further ado, let me turn it over to Emily to get us started.
Hi, so thank you for having me in today. I appreciate that. And I'd like to talk today, first of all, about the issues that we're facing as digital marketers. There are a lot of different areas, and we're flooded with information. And it doesn't really matter where the sources are, because some of that information is digital, some of it is knowledge. And we're trying to get more and more out of demand generation, out of nurturing, and other marketing programs. And we're trying to reach the right audience at the right time with the right message. Easier said than done, because we've also got tons of people asking us about new technologies when frequently we haven't even optimized fully the ones that we already have. And we really finally want to make sure that we're in alignment with sales, because if we're not in alignment with sales, we're not moving towards pipeline and revenue, which is the be-all, end-all. So it's really important to focus on different areas, including the ones that we're seeing here: process, technology, data, and adoption, and all of the things that go into this, because it's not just your systems, it's the people, it's the processes, and then it's the data that you have to work from them. Pretty much all of us have seen some version of this slide or this diagram. And really what it means is that we have lots of tools to pick from. And frequently the answer is not just adding to your MarTech stack, but making the most out of what you're already using, and then selectively adding to your stack based on your actual business needs and the direction that your business is growing.
This is all so familiar to me. In my role, I see this situation a lot. Marketers are usually working in an environment that they didn't really have much influence in creating, at least not holistically. So over the years, one thing has been built on top of another. The whole system gets sort of fragile, and really it just takes one thing to change or to malfunction or to stop working, and then the entire thing grinds to a halt. So here's the thing. Most of these platforms aren't new anymore. A lot of them have been around for, 5, 10, 7 years at this point. And they've been running for so long, and they've had so many different people as admins with their hands in there that really nobody knows what's going on anymore. On top of that, your technologies are maturing, but the maintenance on your systems is still inconsistent, at best, and then non-existent at worst. And this means that, while the capabilities of the tools that you have are expanding, you're really kind of stuck at the starting line, and you're only able to use their most rudimentary functions, which doesn't really serve anybody. On top of all of this, your executive leadership is probably saying things like they want to do ABM and predictive content and cross-channel nurture, but your platforms are, they're not configured to support any of this. And as Emily just talked about, there's about 2,000 shiny new objects every single year that are available, and there's plenty of people in the organization who typically just want to throw another tool at all these issues without really addressing the root of the problem.
So let's start with an example. A typical organization might have this situation. You've had a CRM and marketing automation platforms for, let's say 7 years, and they're connected to each other. And in that time, you've had 6 data interns, 5 platform admins, 4 consulting agencies, 3 directors of marketing, 2 vice presidents of marketing, and you pretty much know where that story ends. So there have been a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different ways of doing things, a lot of ideas and philosophies around the way you should be doing things, and you've got a lot of things going on, and you're losing knowledge as people come in and out of the organization.
So when you combine all of these factors, you get something that just about everyone who's joining this webcast can probably relate to feeling at one point in time, and that's feeling underutilized and not really challenged, and then getting frustrated at your inability to make progress even though you're doing a lot of work. These issues that we're talking about are very legitimate barriers to success for most sales and marketing organizations, but simply acknowledging them won't make them go away. You actually have to figure out a way to bridge the gap from having handicapped tools, processes, and people to enabling everything in the ecosystem to perform as needed.
So we're taking an example. You're the new marketing director, you just got hired, congratulations. You're going to have pretty much the overall goals that most organizations have. You need more prospects, you need better conversion, you need to influence pipeline, and you need to be able to measure it all. And you've got some very specific initiatives as well that that specific company needs. And you've just been brought in because you're the superhero, and you're going to solve all these problems, and you have some great ideas about how to do it.
So like many directors and vice presidents of marketing, you've been hired to drive change in your new organization and to meet certain engagement and revenue goals. And just like many of your peers, oh boy, you have walked into a mess. So a quick audit of your database is going to turn up a few things. You're going to notice that key fields lack standardization across their values. Some of them might be empty. You may see that there's poor data quality that's causing sync cell errors between your CRM and your marketing automation platform. And we all know what headaches that causes with sales. You might have major issues with your account data, leads that are not being matched to existing accounts, tons of duplicates. Maybe some accounts are still assigned to reps that no longer work here. And frankly, there's just a ton of invalid and junky data. And that also includes a huge chunk of inactive leads who just kind of sit in the database but don't engage with any of your marketing materials. You may not even be including them in any of your sends. So they're just sort of sitting there and costing you money. To make matters worse, your technology architecture could probably use some work. You've got quite a few systems that are cobbled together by duct tape and bubblegum. Some share a bidirectional sync, others are one-directional, some are read-only. And then, of course, there's always one that just doesn't seem to connect with anything, kind of floating around in the ether. So in a perfect world, Your tech stack would be architected in such a way that all of these various sources of data can be combined and orchestrated to achieve one consistent view of the customer across all of your platforms. And I know this is so much easier said than done, trust me. Again, in my role, this is something that we do frequently, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of planning. Unfortunately, even for apps with native integrations, it usually takes a bit of brain power and planning and discovery in order to actually architect all of them together correctly. That way they really support your business needs.
So what are you going to do? The first thing you need to do is figure out where you stand, what you've got, and analyze that. Make a plan, define it, find out who's going to help you with it, and then get it working and in place. So you need to actually be able to do all of this so that you can make progress and meet your goals and show that you're making good progress and that you're as wonderful as they thought you were when they hired you. First thing you're going to do is find out what your business requirements are. A lot of times you get into a conversation, you get into a new role, and people say, I need this and this and this and this and this and this. And what they're not doing is separating what they need from what they want and is nice to have. So really you have to find out what is required to run your business. Not the, and it'd be nice if we had this and we'd like to do this and we're thinking 2 years down the line we want to do this. What do you need to run your business today? And what are you going to need in 6 months or a year? You don't want to have a narrow view, but you also don't want to plan for 5 years out. Everything's going to change by then anyway, including the technology. What do you need for your processes, your campaigns? What are your goals, and how are you going to make sure you're meeting the business requirements for those goals? Here on the side, we've got a little bit of an example, which is, say we're doing an ABM project. You're going to need a list of target accounts, know a little bit more about those companies and how big they are and who you're targeting, who those people are that you're targeting, and whether they're even in your database or not, and what your coverage is. And have those people even been interacting with you already, or do they have no idea who you are? Because that's going to tell you where you need to start that project, to start that campaign, to introduce people to your company, or to further their knowledge if they already know who you are. So focus on the big picture of what is required, and you can always have the nice to have later on once you've got that solved.
Absolutely. It's important not to do this next step until you've actually outlined your business requirements. That's extremely important before you approach anything. You need to understand what it is you're trying to do. In a lot of cases, our database has several hundred to several thousands of fields with tens of thousands to millions of leads, and those requirements that you lay out are going to allow you to focus on the task at hand without getting distracted. So again, as a consultant, I do a lot of this step, which is conducting an audit of your database. This is a very tactical and oftentimes mundane bit of work, but it's very important. Essentially what it involves is looking at the fields that are being used in the CRM and the marketing automation platform. We're trying to determine if there are multiple field variations for one important data point, if the values that are in those fields are part of a pick list, or if they're inconsistent or not standardized. We want to take a look at what the fields are that are not being used, what's outdated, what's not being managed. We want to look to aggregate and retire as much of them as possible. So we really want to simplify and streamline our database. It's going to allow us to do a lot more. You also want to make sure that the object and field mapping between your systems is tight. Data should be consistent across your platforms, and that's really what we need to do to develop our 360-degree view of the customer. So your database audit is likely going to turn up a lot of problems, and chances are you are going to see a ton of dirty data in your system. Before you actually can do anything about this data, though, you need to take a step back, and you need to identify the sources of where it might be coming from. Otherwise, all that cleanup work that you're going to do is not going to be any good in about 2 weeks. So first things first, we all know that data erodes naturally over time. I think that theme is pretty prevalent at this point. it is truly a living, breathing thing. And I mean, think about it. We're really talking about human beings. Our data represents people. So their needs, their wants, their fears, goals, preferences, their work situations, their life situations, all of that is changing rapidly. And really what time is doing is it's just constantly working against us to degrade the information that we collect about those people. Various data sources also pose a challenge. As a result of all the awesome campaigns and events that we're executing, we have many of these different sources where data can come into our database. So oftentimes there's little regard given for, how important data points should be updated and or overwritten and by which tools, and that tends to cause a little bit of chaos. There's also the people factor. So human beings make mistakes. Humans also need processes to follow, or else they tend to adapt and move on. When people aren't aware of what the rules are, what the processes are, if they don't have pick list values to choose from and things to kind of keep them on track, that's when you start to see the junk pile up. Additionally, any sort of changes in leadership or administrative turnover is going to naturally disrupt the database, and it's going to cause discrepancies in your data. So finding the sources of where all of your bad, dirty data is coming from is a key step in figuring out how to stop the flow.
So you need to also find out what's in your tech stack. You need to prevent what I call MarTech sprawl. So a lot of people come into a situation, there are lots of different tools, and some of them are working and some of them aren't, and sometimes you're only using pieces of them, and sometimes they overlap. And you need to find out what all the tools are, what they're meant to do, which pieces of them you're using, and then finally kind of put that all together and figure out where the gaps are and what direction your business is going. So you need to also decide how often you should assess your MarTech stack and assess your tools. I know a marketer who very recently just looked at the changes and what was happening with the business globally, looked at his entire stack and went, yep, this is working for us. Nope, this isn't, and was very selectively pruning back some of his tech stack for things that didn't work for the direction they were going and adding in other things to make sure that he was covered for the future plan for the next year or two.
So if this seems like a lot to keep track of, you're right, it is. The most effective way to stay sane and to tie this all together is to implement governance policies. And really that means documenting everything in a global governance document. This document is going to be the central point of information about all your technology configuration, the processes that you put in place to rule over that, any other business rules that you need to put in place and that affect your processes and your technology, as well as any other requirements needed to enforce your organization's goals. So this document will contain information about who is responsible for governance. That means, who owns the data. And again, when I say this, I mean more specifically a person, not a department. So by assigning this sort of responsibility to an actual individual or, small group of individuals, what this does is creates accountability and makes managing sales and marketing operations much easier and much more effective. The document also has to detail information that's related to your systems and tools and the processes that are built onto and around them. So it should document the hierarchy that third-party providers take when they come in to enrich and modify your data. It should account for, what sort of standardized values are appearing in key fields and what have you. Lastly, when it comes to driving change, you need to make sure that you identify the person or the people in your organization who are ultimately responsible for making decisions and getting approvals. One thing that I notice is that projects can easily kind of get sidetracked and paralyzed, both when there are too many cooks in the kitchen and also when there are too few. Now, in order to get you started, we just wanted to share a few resources provided by Openprise. I know how large some of these documents can be when you're getting into creating a global governance doc, so it can be very helpful to have a place to start. So now's a good time to take a little screenshot here. If you want to visit the link that we're sharing on our screen, what you can do is you can head over to openprizetech.com /resources, and then you can either pick up an Eloqua or a Marketo or a Salesforce data governance template. Great. So now that we have done the work, we've done our discovery and our audits, we've documented our requirements, we've formed a plan. Now we've reached the phase of the project where we must execute, and we have two options really. So first and foremost, you can hire or reassign a person on your team to do this work. Their responsibilities would be to manually do things like conduct the annual or semi-annual database audits, and it definitely should happen more often than that, but just from a pure bandwidth perspective, it's unlikely that you would even get 2 in a year out of a person. They also would need to manually troubleshoot data issues and sync errors. They would need to set up automation flows. They'd have to clean up all the dirty data that comes in as people are changing values and programs are changing values, and all while trying to find and plug the holes. So they're trying to fix things, and they're also trying to locate and prevent things from happening as well. They're going to have to do things like dedupe leads, contacts, accounts, opportunities, and most of us know that this is really a 1 or 2 person full-time job. Duplicates is a big issue for a lot of people. And the fact is, though, depending on the size and scale of your marketing efforts, this is really like trying to push a boulder uphill. And it's an easy way to end up burning out your sales and marketing admins. So while this is a great short-term solution to kind of get the ball rolling and get your systems in a better state, it's not necessarily something that's scalable for you. Another option might be to hire a data orchestration service, and I say hire, in quotations. So essentially, a tool like Openprise automates all of the things that we just talked about, and it does so in real time. That's a big differentiator between if you have a human who can only really prioritize one project at a time versus a tool like this that can kind of do it all. So that means if you bring on an orchestration service, your team won't be wasting time with lengthy audits. They're not going to constantly be cleaning data. They're not going to have to deal with the sync error issues and all the gripes that come from sales about routing and lead quality. Duplicates will be a thing of the past. Your account data is going to be in good shape. Pretty much all of the above will be taken care of. Again, you're going to have to, apply your rules and all the requirements that you've planned out. But once it's kind of in there, it's a lot easier to manage as your business grows. So instead of essentially, kind of holding your team back, what you're doing is you're enabling your team to apply their skills and their experience in an optimized environment where they're going to be able to create and innovate instead of just operate.
So to add to what Alyssa was saying, one of the things we want to emphasize is that automating your data cleanup is not putting anyone out of a job. It's freeing them to do things that are more strategic, more interesting, that only a human being can do, to think creatively rather than doing repetitive work that effectively a robot can do. And that's what automation is. So what we want to emphasize is that if you give people that repetitive work, it's really hard to retain them. They want to grow, they want to learn, they want to get to the next level. And so you want to free up their time so that they actually can do that. And even if you're not ready for a full automation solution to cleaning up your data, you can start small with a few little things, show the value of cleaning data and doing it in an automated way, and then grow it over time.
So when you're considering the needs of various departments as it relates to sales and marketing administration, it's really important to apply automation wherever it makes the greatest impact, which, when done well, is pretty much anywhere. So in order to help out our sales and marketing admins, they need a tool that can clean up the database in real time. We need to provide some support to our operations team. So that way the database is always clean and actionable. And they also, have a well-managed system. This will also help them deal with enriching data and cleaning data and aggregating data points. That way they're not wasting so much time chasing all the issues that crop up. Essentially, if our operations team is spending all their time cleaning, they can't focus on supporting the other initiatives that have a greater impact on the business. Things like helping to set up an account-based marketing initiative, which really does actually take quite a bit of data work on the back end before you can even get to the campaign portion.
You also need to make sure that you're providing the data that sales needs without worrying about the extraneous stuff. So you'll probably need geographic information and maybe size of company and whether it's a named account or not to get the leads to the right place and route them properly. You need to make sure you're deduplicated just so you don't have multiple owners, multiple leads, and different activities being assigned to different leads who are really the same person. And you really want to make sure that if there's a key account, the sales rep who is responsible for that account knows as soon as a lead comes in who is not already in the database. So that lead to account matching, for example, becomes really critical if you're focusing on account-based marketing or key accounts or target accounts. So you really want to make sure that you're getting the data that you need to support sales in what they're trying to do, because most of the time these days, sales and marketing own a number together, and you want to make sure that you're going to reach that pipeline and revenue goal.
When it comes to marketing, it is all about automating as much as you can and having data that makes it easy to segment the database and to personalize campaigns. So automating the list load process, controlling input sources, cleaning up key demographic fields, all of that enables the marketing team to spend more time developing targeted campaigns. And it also enables the team to have an easier time of reporting on the influence of those campaigns over pipeline and revenue. So, aside from just giving marketing credit where it's due, it also allows us to make informed decisions about our campaign and content strategies because we're able to track at a very granular level what is influencing the behavior. A good tool is also going to automate and support compliance. At this point, we have all heard all the noise around GDPR, and so when it comes to data compliance and opt-in management, having the right tool that can kind of perform some of this in the background and kind of keep you in check, that's going to help limit a lot of risk.
I always like that one because I always say I'd rather spend the money on marketing programs than on legal fees. So one of the things that people often forget is that once you get operations, marketing, and sales, the story isn't over. You also need to talk about your existing customers, and customer support and customer success are going to need some of that data as well. You want to make sure that customer success and sales are getting the same information and the same data, and that it's clean and accurate so that you can monitor for cases of being able to upsell or cross-sell when a customer is ready to grow, but also to monitor for at-risk customers so that you can intervene, make them happy again, and keep moving on. So just remember that once you close the deal, there are renewals, there are upsells, there are cross-sells, there are at-risk customers. You want people to be happy and to stay with your company and to retain those accounts. So don't neglect customer support and customer success when you're collecting data, cleaning it, and making sure everyone's informed about it.
There is so much that goes into optimizing and cleaning your systems, but eventually all of your hard work will pay off and your team will be able to reap the rewards. So for starters, you'll have a nice, clean, actionable database that requires less effort to maintain, and that's going to allow your team to dream and develop campaigns that will reach the right people with the right message at the right time, as well as enable some more advanced tactics, all the, the beautiful shiny things that we would like to be able to do, things like account-based marketing, predictive content, omni-channel nurture, and essentially the data is going to be reliable, sales is going to be happy, monthly reporting is going to be clean, and best of all, you can finally go on vacation and not feel compelled to check your email to make sure nothing is blowing up back at the office.
So a little bit of closing advice. First thing, don't be intimidated. There's a lot that we've mentioned here. Just start small, start simple, but do something. And keep in mind that cleaning is a continuous process, not a one-time action. If we go back to this example where you are the new marketing director, it means that anyone who had you in their database in your previous role now has dirty data in their database and needs to update you for your new role and your new company. So just keep in mind that this is a continuous process and there is turnover in all industries, and you want to make sure that your data stays effective and stays active, but you don't have to do everything all at once. You can start as small as taking the state field, deciding whether that's going to be the full name of the state or an abbreviation, and seeing if that helps you when you start to pull a list for, say, a field event, and you want everybody in the state of New Jersey. If you do that and you've cleaned up the data and it's easier to pull the list, and you used to have a list of 5,000 and now you have a list of 7,500, if you assume that the same percentages pertain and you go down the row there, if you have another 50% worth of people showing up to that event, then another 50% are going to engage, and another 50% become opportunities, and another 50% become pipeline, assuming that your conversion metrics stay all the same. So start small, start simple, prove the value, and then move on to the next thing.
Another thing to remember is that you're not in this alone. You want to make sure that you are engaging internally with the other people who are involved with or who own your sales and your marketing automation platforms. It's really, really important to make sure that you get sales and marketing aligned not only on the business goals, but on, really the processes and what the plan is to actually achieve those goals. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you're including sales, from an actual sales, rep perspective, and then also sales operations. These are the people who set everything up behind the scenes, who kind of keep the cogs and the wheels turning. So they need to be involved in the discussion as well. It's very important to make sure that we're not making decisions in silos and that we're not doing work in silos. That way, again, we do have a sort of cohesive, operation that we're running here where everyone has what they need and we're really servicing our customer.
I'm the documentation person. I am completely obsessed with this, but document everything. Who owns things? When things get updated? What fields get overwritten and what fields don't? Because there are times when you want to retain whatever the original value was for a field. And also, if you document everything, you leave the next person. Eventually, you'll get promoted. And, when you're no longer the new director of marketing, you're the new vice president of marketing at the same company, your director is going to want to know what the heck you did. So document everything. You can hand over those documents, and they'll know the context of what you were doing, why, how it's supposed to work, and then if there are any problems, you'll understand what it was supposed to do and be able to correct for that.
Finally, you just need to know and accept that there will be changes over time. That's kind of what keeps it interesting. So, businesses evolve rapidly. Our industries evolve rapidly. Our audiences evolve rapidly. We need to be able to approach new challenges with an open mind and not view them as roadblocks or reasons, to not approach the issue, but as opportunities. This is a way for us to, do more, to engage more, and to be better at what we do. So the last bit of advice is to keep it methodical and to keep it simple. As creative marketers, we have a tendency to want to get complex about things, and it's really best if you can just kind of stay focused and tackle one thing at a time.
What this ultimately comes down to is time and money. So you want to raise the profile of what seems really mundane, which is cleaning your database, by showing what you're able to do by documenting these things, governing things correctly, and cleaning them properly. What you're really trying to do is show the revenue value of your work, or because we did this, we can now do this. Because we cleaned the database and we have city information, we can now be more effective in doing field events. for example. And tie your work to the broader initiatives. You're not cleaning the database because it's nice to have a shiny database, so that's a wonderful thing. You're enabling personalization or ABM or account scoring or any of those things. What are you helping the company to do that they couldn't do before? And you're saving time. If you can make your marketers more effective and they no longer have to spend the time doing this, what are they able to do to pursue new initiatives that enable the company to do more marketing programs, better marketing programs? And then finally, what are you building as far as pipeline and revenue because of your efforts? So this will help you get time, budget, support from not just from marketing, but also from sales and other departments to give you some time so that you can fund and support and spend time on future efforts that you want to do as far as managing your data and pursuing new initiatives. We have some resources for you. You can download these from the resources in the On24 window, or you can grab these URLs and go to the Openprise website and check them out. But please feel free to contact Openprise if you have questions about this or to look at some of the other resources on our website.
All right, that was an awesome presentation, Emily and Alyssa. Data can be a dry topic, but you guys did a really great job of bringing it to life and some really good specific tactical suggestions. So I'm going to recommend our team make sure we put a lot of that into action for our own company. So we definitely are going to get a lot of questions about going back and reviewing that. So I do want to remind everybody that you'll get a link to Reviewed on Demand. And we will now go switch over to Q&A because we're going to have a lot of those coming in. So as I mentioned, one quick reminder, go ahead and type in any questions that come to mind, and we'll go ahead and get started now with questions. Okay, so to dive right in, we've got a good question that came in from Gina, which a lot of people probably can relate to. So we're up against our database size in Marketo and nervous to remove people we no longer email. She included unsubscribes and people haven't engaged in a while because it will impact reporting and Marketo and Salesforce won't match. How do you recommend people deal with this?
So
throw a zinger at you right out of the gate.
Yeah, this is Emily. I'm maybe the wrong person to ask because I'm big on purging everything. I'm always like, well, past reporting is past reporting, and Salesforce especially is always a moving target because you're always looking at the current data in Salesforce. It's not a historical record. And I'm really big at, like, if it's not serving your purpose, if it's a hard bounce email address, like, get rid of it. But that does impact reporting. So Alyssa, do you want to talk about how that affects reporting and what you've seen with various clients?
Yeah, sure. And Emily, I do tend to agree with you on that. I mean, data costs money to hold on to. And I think one of the ways that you can kind of counteract some of that is to actually make the case for, holding on to this data that we don't use is actually costing us money. And it is a risk in your database too. It's, it's a population of people who you really either shouldn't be emailing or, things of that nature where if you do on accident, that's problematic. Now, when it comes to reporting, there's really not a nice, clean way to kind of make updates to your database and then, have all your reports somehow reflect magically the way that they should. But one of the ways that we've tended to deal with this is, in sort of the yearly reporting, when there are major changes or initiatives done to clean up the data, whether that's in Salesforce or your marketing automation platform or both, we make a note of it. And it's important to, kind of make a point of that in reporting and then reset your baselines. Again, I don't think there's all that much to be lost in getting rid of data that, was never really serving your purposes and kind of obscuring, performance and things like that. So if you can get yourself to a different baseline, it's actually going to improve your reporting going forward. You just want to make sure that you make a note of it.
Great. Question from Gary. He said, if I have projects like these that I'm trying to accomplish and realize my database isn't clean, how can I get some runway so that I have time to clean up my database? I guess sort of an interim strategy.
Yeah, I would say you're going to have to get some projects done just because you're going to, you need to show that you're actually doing something. Operations is a little bit like, I always say it's a little bit like the plumbing. People kind of look at it and go, yeah, well, it's not a big deal until the shower backs up and then they're all over you wondering why they can't take a shower. We really want to start looking at marketing operations as something closer to the foundation of the house rather than just the plumbing. And if you have a solid foundation, you can build on top of it. So I would say, you're going to have to get some things out and you're going to have to let people know up front. Like, I know our audiences can be bigger. You're going to get a small audience right now. As we clean the database and as we do these marketing efforts, it's going to get bigger over time. Recognize that we're not maximizing our database right now, but that we will be as we do these cleaning projects. In the meantime, we're going to give you the best audience we can for your nurture email or your event promotion or whatever it is, and gradually build on that. So you're going to, you have to get some of those things out first. Alyssa, any techniques you could like to add?
Yeah, I think it's also helpful to kind of take a look at the campaigns that you're running and scale back things that have traditionally not performed well, or that require significant bandwidth that don't really have much of a return. Because I see it a lot. Companies will execute campaigns and they don't really have a sense for what the goals of the campaign are, what they really hope to achieve. They're just kind of throwing out emails or messaging just to kind of put something out there. And that's also not something that you want to do. So if we can kind of eliminate some of that and say, okay, we're going to focus on the campaigns and the events and the things that are critical, but then we're going to use our other time to get the house clean. We got to get everything in order and get our foundation in check. What you'll be able to do is you'll be able to make the case for, okay, we're going to step back and we're going to slow down a little bit, but once we've got everything in order, we're going to be able to accelerate, and not just in personalizing emails or using dynamic imagery. I mean, you're going to be able to tap into some of the really really powerful functionality that these marketing automation platforms offer. Things like predictive content or tracking across omni-channel nurtures. And it's all going to, be reflected in your reporting. You'll be able to track it end to end. But again, you can't get there unless, things get cleaned up. So there's the struggle of, kind of making sure that you show the value of those things and then really advocate for them.
Yeah, great answers. Good question from Patrice came in. In your past experience, what have been the top offending behaviors at the source of creating data issues, and how did you change those behaviors?
Oh, gosh. There's a lot of sources for bad data. And I think so specifically with behaviors, a lot of the bad data can come over from a sales organization that isn't totally sure what they're supposed to be doing. So I think, a lot of the behaviors that contribute to dirty data, they're not intentional and they're not malicious. It's just the product of, we didn't know the process, or in some cases, they might know the process, but they might not understand the value. So to the person who's updating the data, it's just another thing that they have to do in their day that they don't, necessarily understand how it directly contributes. So what the responsibility of marketing and sales, is to kind of get together and understand, what those impacts are. And then, you have to develop a system for, okay, these are our rules. And if you're not adhering to these rules, what's the follow-up for that?
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I'd also add that a lot of the sources is not just behavior, but you're getting data from so many different places. Like you're going to get a spreadsheet from a live event that you went to, and you're going to get another spreadsheet in a completely different format with different rows, different abbreviations, different things that have full country or state or whatever it is written out from a third-party vendor where you're posting content. You're going to get something else from your internal forms that you're using on your website. And so it's not by anyone's particular, intention, but you're getting data from so many sources, and each one of those sources is internally consistent, but they don't match each other. So you need that cleanup in the background to consolidate that.
We had a couple of questions in line with this one, but Donna pretty much point blank asked, how can I justify spending budget on cleaning, whether it's a person or budget, asking how to sort of build the case internally?
This is one of my favorite ones because I spent a lot of time at a previous company drawing on a whiteboard for my CFO, my CEO, my vice president of marketing, anyone who would sit still long enough, and sometimes even if they wouldn't, and going like, basically we're burning money by having all of this in our database that we can't use. So I had a database of almost 1 million records, and we're paying for 1 million records, but I knew that over half of that was totally unusable because it was like 10 years old. And there was nothing I could do with it, and people had moved on from different companies. And really it was, we had this team, I had this remote team, and they were spending time cleaning up data manually. And this is a long time ago before all these tools existed to do some automation around this. And they're looking at all of these records, but leads were coming in at a speed that they would never be able to catch up with. And I called it cleaning Mount Everest with a toothbrush. First of all, you're never going to get anywhere. No one's going to notice the difference. And second, why would you even want to? So you can justify part of it in the time that you're taking to sift through the data you have to look for the things you want. So, if it takes you 3 hours to pull a list together because you have to keep tweaking it to take out dirty data or to put in a new filter, and you've got these like 50 filters and then some of them break because you've got an and instead of an or and all of that stuff, and it's taking you time to troubleshoot, if it took you 5 minutes to make that list, what else could you do in 2 hours and 55 minutes with your time to do better marketing programs and better marketing operations for your company? So part of it's time, and part of it's just paying for that database. So if we didn't have 1 million records, if we had 500,000 records, we wouldn't be paying on our contracts for Marketo or Salesforce or Elko or whatever it is. We'd be saving that money and getting more value out of it at the same time. But it is absolutely a hard sell. It doesn't come easily.
Definitely. And you have to remember that, again, data work is a moving target. So the second that you sweep some stuff up and throw it in the garbage can, there's, a million little gremlins behind you kind of ripping up paper and, laying out dirt behind you. So and that's never going to change no matter what you do, no matter how many automation flows, you set up. There's always going to be kind of, new sources of dirty data and things like that. So either having a person or even better yet, if it makes sense to have a tool to do your data work for you, it's necessary. You really can't execute anything else when you have dirty data. It's not worth it almost.
And I would say that I'd rather have a clean database of 100,000 than a dirty database of 500,000.
Yeah.
Related question to that, and you guys touched on this in the presentation, but Ty asked what kind of metrics or KPIs would we use to track ROI of these efforts? So are you looking at better campaign performance, like traditional opens, clicks, conversions? What would you say people should be pointing to sort of show the positive impact?
So I think there's a bunch of ways to look at it. So number one, you can definitely evaluate the performance of your database, kind of butt it up against the performance of your content and your campaigns. Now, obviously, that's sort of twofold. On one hand, the actual makeup of your campaign and your messaging, that's going to influence engagement. But then, of course, the audience that you send to as well. So you want to make sure that you're kind of setting baselines and evaluating that way. But one of the things that we like to do whenever we're doing major database cleanups is, sort of set goals. So we want to, create an active database of, 90%. We want to have a marketable database of 95%. And you figure out where you are today. You kind of set your goals for where you want to be. And then, a lot of the things that you can say before starting a project is, these are some of the things that we hope to achieve or that we hope cleaning up the database will drive. So, things like better open rates or, higher deliverability rates or things like that. And you can kind of start laying those out.
I would also say size of audience. For example, I've just been working with a company, and they're doing a bunch of field events in the United States and Canada, and we're using the U.S. Census data to get urban areas so that they can, she had like 19 filters because she needs the cities in, say New York City area. We need all those surrounding suburbs and places in Connecticut and places in New Jersey. And so she's got lots and lots and lots of filters. By actually consolidating that, we're using Openprise for them to match the cities in their database to urban areas. She's able to use one filter, and then she just puts the, marketable, not unsubscribed, et cetera, on top of that. And for example, with New York, we had her audience grow by about 30%. And in Charlotte metro area, the audience grew by over 100% because it's hard to figure out all the zip codes that you want to include in metro area or all the cities you want to include in metro area and not leave anything out. By using the census data, we're letting the U.S. government figure out what the metro area is, and then we're using that to define it, even if in a place like the East Coast where states are smaller, you're easily able to say, well, and the surrounding area. And so if she can market to 10,000 people where she used to market to 7,500, and you say that you get a 50% RSVP rate and 50% of them are showing up, you're still going to have a bigger audience at the end if you're starting with a bigger audience at the beginning.
Okay, great. Really good questions, great answers. We're going to take one more before we wrap up. If we didn't get to your question today, I'm going to ask Emily and Alyssa to follow up with you directly. Last question I'd ask you ladies to tackle from Marissa in the audience said, I can't hold on to a marketing automation admin. Do you have any tips for retention or development so I don't have to hire a new admin every 12 to 18 months?
That's a really good question, and I think that's a pain that's felt by a lot of people on the call, and I definitely, personally, I've seen it. I know Emily's dealt with it. A big thing is training, making sure that whatever platforms you've got people using, whether it's Eloqua, Marketo, HubSpot, any of those, that they are trained on those tools. And that they get continuing education. So I know, we hire people as experts to run our platforms, but the fact of the matter is that these platforms are evolving, capabilities are evolving, and so your actual teammates are going to benefit from ongoing training. So that's number one. And then, for me, I would say allow them to be challenged. Don't fill their days with, things like list imports or fixing, location data or things like that. You want to get them involved in campaign development and how can we, customize this campaign or, deliver complex messaging, things like that. Make it exciting for them.
Yeah, I would also say when they start, plan for that. And one of the things you can plan for is, we're going to have you do data cleanup for this many months, and then we're going to transition you into this, more interesting role, and then we're going to so give them a roadmap on a career, rather than you're going to be sitting cleaning data for the rest of your life, because no one's going to want to do that. And they're going to, so plan for if I bring this person in, where can they go to do it? And, these skills are valuable, so give them the responsibility. A lot of young people I work with are interested in management, or at least exploring the idea of management to see whether they like it or not. And so make it, And in 18 months, when you've graduated out of this position and we hire the next young person, you're going to train them so that you teach them to be you 18 months ago. And that gives them the opportunity to explore that potential for management or training or, working with a team as part of their role.
That's a great points. All right, I want to thank Emily and Alyssa. There's really great content here. As I mentioned in the beginning, this can be kind of a dry topic, but I thought they presented some real outstanding real-life examples that you can all use, so thank them both for that. And thank you all for making time today to attend. You'll also, all registrants will get a link to go back and view this on demand or share it with your peers. And then also a reminder that there are resources within the resource section here that you can go ahead and download and grab. So thank you again to Emily and Alyssa, and thank you all for attending. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.